All right, so good day, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to Las Vegas. Welcome to VMworld. It's our pleasure to have you here today. So thank you very much for coming to this session. So one thing I'd like to say just before we get started, as indicated in the abstract for this, most of this is going to be interactive demo. So please come on up, especially if you have some hard time seeing from the back, because we are going to be walking through this and we want to make sure we have a nice, healthy, interactive discussion and Q&A as we go through this. So again, welcome. My name is Hisham Murad. I'm from VMware. I'm part of the Cloud Management Business Unit focused on technical marketing for the vRealize suite. And our focus today is going to be specifically on the vRealize operations.
Yeah, thanks, Hisham. And my name is Chima Njaka. I'm part of the product management team for the Management Business Unit. Happy to be here to talk about our talk, the KISS of vRealize operations. What do we mean by KISS? Well, keep it simple, smart person. So normally as a product manager, this slide is pretty interesting. It's from a product management perspective, it's my get out of jail free card, I like to call it, because we're typically talking about information that's on the roadmap that may or may not show up in the product, and we instruct our customers or prospects not to make purchasing decisions based on it. But the cool thing about this particular presentation is this slide doesn't apply, because we're going to be talking about stuff that's actually within the general available product today. So with that, I'll go through a few slides just to introduce what we're talking about, get into some of the new keep it simple elements that are inside our latest release of vRops 6.3, which we just released a couple weeks ago. Then we'll get right into the demo session. Sound good? Awesome. Just a quick show of hands. How many of you are familiar with vRops now? Oh, nice. I wish I could take a picture of that real quick. How many of you are not so familiar with vRops? Okay, still a smattering of hands. All right, so then if, for the sake of the people not so familiar with vRops, I'm going to have a few slides that introduce vRops just a little bit. Bear with us, old hands, smart people, while I just talk about, give an introduction to vRops real quick. So vRops, we like to say, is a general purpose analytics engine. It takes analytics engine in from whatever and tries to make sense of it via our analytic capabilities within the product. We can collect metrics from anything within the environment, and we extend vRops to do so by using this notion of management packs. So for the vCenter stuff that we all know about, because this is VMware and we love VMware first, for the vCenter stuff, we have a vCenter management pack. For Cisco, we have a Cisco management pack. For Azure, we have an Azure management pack, et cetera, et cetera. Right? So that's the way we extend the product to be able to bring in metrics from the objects that you care about, that you want to manage. Then we do fancy, CIA analytics on it to do things like dynamic thresholdings, look for anomalies, provide you with interesting symptoms and alerts that matter to you. Now, the product is traditionally, when you look at the product, it's organized in this notion of this health, risk, efficiency sort of dashboard that if you've been using vRops, and it looks like a whole bunch of you are familiar with vRops, it makes sense. The health part of it is about stuff that's happening right now, stuff that you need to pay attention to. The house is on fire, or your hair's on fire, and you need to deal with it, or you're going to wind up looking like me and Hisham, because, we've been dealing with this health badge for a long time now. The risk and efficiency side of things are about issues that are maybe not immediate. You might be running out of capacity. There might be opportunities for you to reclaim capacity, that sort of thing. Farther out items that you might want to take care of. When we do so, we provide you with a set of alerts at the bottom that make sense for that type of issue. And so that's what we have been presenting to you. But now, that is our current user interface and our current user experience. The question is that really KISS? Is that really keeping it simple? Smarty pants. In some cases, people have said that, our product today is expert friendly. And so we are constantly looking for ways to make it easier to use. Hashem is going to show you some workflows of how easy it is to use today. I'm going to talk about, real quick, just some things that we've done in the latest release of vRealize Ops to make it even simpler for neophyte and even our traditional users. First off, we have introduced a new home dashboard. So when you log into the product for the first time with 6.3, you'll see this new dashboard that is what we call our recommendations page. For neophyte users who log into the product for the first time, sometimes all that information that we're putting up in front of you is like, okay, so what am I supposed to do now? Well, here we've made the easy button accessible by saying these are specific things that you can do to your environment right now to make it better. This stuff was always there. It was just you had to go through the alerts section and go through a number of clicks to get to the recommendation for a particular issue that has shown up. What we've done here is just expose that recommendation first so that you see that recommendation. You can also get to the traditional alert itself, the reason why we're recommending this recommendation. You can still get there and click on that information and you get to the details of the underlying alert. But for items that are on this page, you can click on that item immediately and immediately have the system go through and execute on that particular item. What we're showing here on this page is for a particular object, and there are a number of objects across the top, whether it be a virtual machine or data store or cluster, what have you. For that particular object, we're showing you the number of objects, in this case 21. Of those 21 objects, 7 of them are critical. That means that those 7 of those VMs have at least one critical alert or one critical issue that you'll see in the list below. And you can filter this by clicking on the, Hashem will go into the details here, but I'm a little bit stealing a little bit of his fire because I've got a few more minutes to talk. You click on that item, it'll filter the rest of this list down to those items that you want to see. So if you want to see the criticals or for some reason you want to see the immediates first, you can click on that and that will highlight those items here. You can then click on that item and execute that action. You can filter this, certainly this is still the health risk efficiency badges here, so you can filter this based on the type of alert or item as well, or action. You can filter it by the vCenter as well. You can also see the items or objects with the top number of issues on the lowest health area of this particular item. Another thing that we've introduced in 6.3, keeping it simple, is a tighter integration with DRS. How many of you are using DRS in your environment today? Oh, excellent. And do you have it fully automated? Nice. So one of the capabilities that we have within VROps is this notion of workload placement. What we are doing is working hand in hand with the scheduler that's within DRS, and if you're familiar with DRS, you know that it's in place to manage the resource utilization across hosts within a cluster. It's balancing out the use and doing so in a trusted way for many years now to ensure that the resource availability within a cluster are there for the VMs in that cluster. But what if that cluster is on fire? What if that cluster is starting to look like me and running out of resource and no hair left? For DRS, where DRS is in place to make the VMs healthy within a cluster, VROps is a scheduler looking across your environment, trying to ensure that your clusters are healthy, that your clusters are happy. So we're looking to offload information from the cluster by moving VMs out of that cluster into a new cluster, and then handing off to DRS, where DRS can then take care of balancing within that cluster. So what we've done in this particular dashboard is make visible what DRS is doing. In this particular dashboard, you can click on a particular, you can see across your clusters your health, your resource utilization in both CPU and memory. I'm not showing here, but CPU and memory based. If you click on a particular cluster, you can see the host within that cluster and their resource utilization in CPU and memory. And not only that, there's more. You can also, directly from within this interface, set the settings for DRS. You can set the settings to fully automate DRS, or put it in manual mode for some reason if you want to do that. You can also set the aggressiveness level. It comes out of the box at the middle level, level 3, but you can set that to most aggressive on one side, or to make it more conservative on the other side, directly within the interface of vRealize. So you don't have to go back and forth between vRealize and the vCenter client. The other thing that we have added within the product is this component, which is a new toolbar showing you the adapter health. Again, I mentioned that vRealize is agnostic analytics engine. The way that it gets its information is via all these adapters that are plugged into the product. Well, if those adapters are not working or have health issues of some sort, you're not going to be getting any metrics into the product, but you might not otherwise know about it. So what we've done here is we've made that very visible by putting that up in the toolbar. If there's an issue with any of the adapters that you've instantiated in the product, you'll see that. And if you then click on any one of these items, it'll take you directly into the solutions area of the product and highlight that particular adapter that is having a problem and tell you why and allow you to address it. So those are just a few ways that we have endeavored to make the product a little bit easier to use in 6.3. Now let's go and show you a demo. And we've got quite a bit of time. There you go.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much. Any questions on what Chima just discussed? No? Good. So we're going to actually go through a demonstration. Actually, the rest of the time is going to be demonstration. So I think that's good, right? You don't want to see slides all week, correct? All right. All right. So this is what we want to show you. So the first thing we want to walk through is workload balancing. So I want to show some of the workload balancing that Chima just talked about. And we're going to walk through that first, just because, again, it works hand in hand with DRS, as Chima said. We're going to have some movements of VM, and we want to see all this stuff happening in the background. The next thing I want to show you is how easy it is to go about troubleshooting. From that home page that Chima talked about also is how we go about and treat that almost like your to-do list for the day, right? What's on fire, what are the things that are going to be breaking, moving into the future, and you want to try to proactively address within your environment. So I'll show you guys that. And then I also want to show you some of the integration with vRealize Log Insight, which is our log analytics solution, right? So everybody here, by the way, who owns vCenter, which is probably all of you, you already own a license of Log Insight for vCenter. You get a 25 OSI license of Log Insight per vCenter server license that you have, and you can use that to monitor and grab the logs from your existing vSphere environment. Okay, so make note of that if you weren't aware of that, and download Log Insight because you already own it for your vSphere environment, likely. So we're going to touch on how we leverage that to also capture a lot of that information that's set in logs, right? A lot of information there that we capture that's really difficult to make sense of and actually troubleshoot, but we surface all that information up for you. We're going to talk about that. Next, we're going to talk about capacity management. And I'll just put a little shameless plug here. For those of you who are using VROps today, and even if you're not, if you want to get more detail around capacity management in VROps, I'm doing a capacity management session only. So it's only going to be focused on how to use vRealize operations for capacity management within your environment. It's on Wednesday afternoon sometime, so look it up. I can't remember the number offhand, 7924, I think, something like that. And lastly, we'll talk about extensibility, right? So Chima mentioned agnostic. So we'll show you some of those agnostic and heterogeneous capabilities, being able to really truly manage that multi-cloud environment from vRealize operations. So I just wanted to make sure that was up there so we can follow that track. All right, so here I am. I am actually logged in, so just shortly before you folks walked in, I actually logged in. Here's VRealize Operations, and the first thing you log in is you see this home screen up there. And so this is the home screen, and the nice thing about this now is if you have multiple vCenters within your environment, you're going to actually be able to see them here in this list. Right, so you register your vCenters, you can see multiple vCenters. You can go in and focus in on specific areas in each of the vCenters. In this environment, I'm running this actually in the cloud. It's just a few VMs, a few hosts, small hosts in here, and one vCenter. But you'll be able to see that. Go in, filter, look at the alerts. You can see the vCenter. You can see the clusters. That's what I'm looking at right now. You can see I have a critical alert here. Right, this is actually telling me, it's telling me, use vMotion to migrate VMs to a different cluster. Okay, so it's actually telling you that right out of the box here as soon as you power this on in my given environment here. But I'm actually going to show you how we do that in this workload balancing and placement engine. So let's switch right there, and we're going to come back to this. So again, here we're going to be able to switch through all these object types right here. But because I want to show the workload balancing, and that's going to do a bunch of emotions in the background, I want to start with that. So Chima talked about this vSphere DRS cluster settings, right? DRS does a tremendous job doing workload balancing within the boundaries of a cluster, right? Within the boundaries of a cluster. But you guys have one cluster, two clusters, many clusters. Well, you know what? You could, if you choose to, leverage some of those resources across those clusters, and now you can leverage workload balancing in vRealize Operations to actually move VMs across clusters. And that's what I'm going to show you right now. So here, first of all, I want to come in here and I can see that I have only two clusters, but I can see this one's fully automated, this one's aggressive. This one here is also fully automated. This one is most aggressive, right? And it's most aggressive because I have a lot of contention in here, right? This orange and red is telling me that I have a lot of contention, and then I can get a little bit more details specifically on the hosts within that cluster as well. So I'm able to see that. Now, if I wanted to make any DRS settings changes, well, this little gear icon with the lightning in it allows me to come in and change it to whatever I want, right? So you can make those changes right here for DRS. Okay, great. Now, the next thing is workload utilization. So let's go over here. And it's only one virtual data center that I have here, two clusters, as you saw. So these are my two clusters, right? And so very quickly, you can't really see this on the projector, but it's sort of a light green and then a slightly darker green, and then it moves into sort of pink and then deeper into the red over here. And the left is saying underutilized, and then optimal is right around here, and then it starts to get into this overutilized area. Okay, so let's take a look at this really quickly. So here I have this cluster. It's called Production 2. I'm going to click on it, and it's showing me there, the pop-up is saying the workload is only 67%. And if I scroll down, because I actually reduced the resolution, I'm having to do some scrolling now. But anyways, you can see CPU is moderate, memory is, up there in the 60s, but not crazy, right? Not bad. If I go back up and do this now unclick that, unselect that, let me select the other cluster. Now you can see the cluster and its hosts are right up against the wall, right? I mean, they got nowhere else to go here. You can see the workload on my Production 1 cluster. Hopefully everybody can see this. Trust me if you can't. It's 124% workload, right? So the workload is very high, right? And then I can actually see the hosts again all down here. And again, if I hover over these hosts, again, I can see 117, 115, etc. If I scroll down again, what do I see here? I see a very recent spike. So I've had some, a lot of movement over time here, but then I kind of like steadily high up in the 100, and now I'm like quite high in demand just very recently, right? So, you know what, you look at this and then you look at the bottom and I can see CPU and memory, both again, pretty high. So why not? Why not leverage that first cluster where I have resources and actually do some workload balancing? So in this case, you can actually do this against two different objects. You can do it against the virtual data center object. In this case, I only have two clusters. But you can also do this against something called a custom data center object. So in vRealize Operations, some of you have multiple clusters. you may not want to be moving VMs across each. You can say, I want cluster 1 and cluster 5. Those are the ones I want to be able to share resources across. So you create a custom virtual data center, and then you'll see that object in the top of this screen, and then you can basically do workload balancing against that. So let me select this virtual data center up here. So you can see, I can see it. It's actually sitting at 86%, right? That's because one cluster is low, one cluster is high. It's kind of averaging the workload out, right? So I can see that. And now all I have to do here is, before I do that, let me just show you that. Now I can see the average, essentially, of the total virtual data center here. But now I can select this gear, and you can see this action here. It says rebalance container. So I'm going to rebalance this container, which is my virtual data center here. Now, it goes out, analyzes the data, and it comes back and says, here is my source cluster, production 1, right? That's the one that's heavily utilized. A lot of contention in there, right? We just saw that. And it says, I want you to send these to destination cluster number 2. And it gives you the VM names to the left there. And it actually will spell out what's happening. It says CPU demand is the big thing right now that's going on in here. So I'm just going to click on Begin Action. When I click on Begin Action, it's going to go out and actually now trigger all these vMotions from production 1 to production 2 cluster. Now, the nice thing about this is, as you can see from this dialog, especially those in the back, that everything is tracked, and we have an ID for this, right? So you can see that I'm actually recent tasks. I can go in and view this, and then I also have the ID for each job that I've essentially created. So this was a rebalance action. So now I have that here. So this is going to go ahead and balance this for us. Yes, sir. Question? I'm sorry. Say that again. So we actually, are you familiar with vRealize operations at all, or no? Okay, so in vRealize operations, we have a number of rules, and there's actually associated actions with the rebalance container action. So you can actually say, you know what, I don't have it, but Chima has it, and you have it, right? So you actually have the ability to leverage the RBAC capabilities in vRealize operations to do that. Yes, sir. So the gentleman's question was, can I actually set this up to basically move VMs across the different containers that I want? And in this case, the answer is yes, but the container, just to be specific, is clusters, right? Because within a cluster, DRS is doing its job, and DRS has been around for a long time and does a fantastic job. The only time we actually work, workload placement works with DRS is when we start to move across the clusters. So just to go back what I mentioned earlier, custom data center construct allows you to say, I want cluster 1 and cluster 4 and cluster 5, and I want to balance across these clusters. Then instead of doing it at the virtual data center, there'll be one layer up in here, which will be the custom data centers, and you just basically balance across that.
Let me add also that it's also possible to use the policies in our custom grouping to determine actually which VMs you want to participate in that rebalancing or not as well. So we've got the custom data center construct, and you also have the policy-based capacity as well.
So you can refine this any way you want. The gentleman back there, then we'll come to you, sir. Yeah, great question, great question. So the gentleman's asking, well, what about DRS rules, right? What if I have some rules? You can't move this VM, and you can't. So anything, we actually completely respect any DRS rules that are there, so we do not violate any DRS rules, right? So if you're saying, hey, this VM can't move, or you have like an affinity rule, this VM has to be on this host, and this one can't be on that host, or anything like that, we completely honor those rules. We will not move those VMs.
So beginning with vSphere 6.0, those rules follow the VM. So the affinity rules, if it's in one cluster, it's going to be followed in the other cluster. So when we make the destination move and pass off to DRS, those rules are being honored in the destination cluster as well.
It hurts so much when people leave. Anyways. Does that answer your question? Everyone's good? Oh, more questions. Yes, sir.
Just a quick question. The recent task is the task
Yes.
Is that in VRops, or is that linking back to vSphere?
So the gentleman's question was that the recent task and the task ID, is that in vRealize operations? Yes, that is in vRealize operations, and it's completely audited. So just for the sake of time, I'll just show you very quickly where you need to go. Here we have all these icons, and again, because I have to reduce the resolution a bit, this is messing me up. But right here, this is the administration. If you go there, when you go in there, one of the pages is recent tasks, and you'll be able to see them. And we also have a complete audit trail, so everything is audited all in there. Okay? And then, just so you're aware, right, any vMotions that actually take place are also audited on the vCenter side as well. Okay? All right, so we've covered that, and I'm going to let these vMotions happen because there's like 4 vMotions that are happening in my little tiny environment here, and so I'll do a quick refresh right now on the screen, but when I come back a little bit later, we'll probably see this a little bit better balancing. So you can already see that this guy's moved down a bit, right? But, I'm not, completely there, so we'll have better balancing. But you can see one's moved up, one's moved down. Yes, sir.
So you move systems from one cluster over to another cluster.
Yes, sir.
One that was heavily utilized is going down. What's preventing from the other cluster from going and being maxed out? Is there some kind of threshold you can set so that when you're moving stuff, you want to make sure that the cluster is not at 99% utilization?
Right. So actually, there are some settings in the policy that you typically would set for that. I would highly recommend, just so we get through all the demos that we have here, if you're able to come to the capacity session on Wednesday, because I'll talk a little bit more detail about that and how we actually configure policies. So I'll show you a lot more detail around that.
But we look at the availability of the resource at the destination when making that move to ensure that there's available capacity at the destination.
All right. Okay, so that covers the workload balancing. We'll come back and take a look at the screen afterwards. So now let's just go back home for a moment, right? So again, this is a new page that we just added in the last release, which released last Tuesday, vRealize Operations 6.3. You get this new home page, which really helps you kind of troubleshoot and maneuver, where do I need to go next? Right? So on that first screen, you saw that a warning right there, that alert saying, hey, you need to move VMs. And that's essentially what I just did through the workload balancing. But let's take a look at a couple of other things while we're in here. You know what I mean? So let's go to virtual machines, because I have a number of alerts on the virtual machines and whatnot. So I go to the virtual machines. It tells me I have 24 objects here. 4 of them are critical. I can actually click on these, and it'll show me the ones that are critical. I can go in and say, hey, the guest application, check the guest application, go and determine, why is this high memory workload happening? This was unexpected high memory workload. Now, what I can do is I simply just dig down into this. Again, remember, this is almost like a to-do list, right? Dig down deep, and you can go in and see what's going on here. So I get the details. It says, hey, check the application, make sure this is expected or unexpected behavior. But also it gives you another recommendation to say, hey, you know what? In case you just simply need more memory because you have, it's undersized, we'll give you the actionable alert, right? So I can actually take action right from here. So I can actually go in and say, I actually want to set the memory for this. Now, what's interesting about this, and again, I apologize for those in the back, you can't really see this, but it's actually making a recommendation. So I actually have 2 gig configured, but it's actually making a recommendation of roughly 4.5 gig. Now, that's not just kind of a number thrown out in the sand. It actually looks at the behavior of that VM over time, and it determines, where have been the spikes and whatnot, and it determines, based on all the analytics, what the recommended capacity should be. And I, again, talk about recommended capacity in more detail on Wednesday. Yes, sir?
How often does it check with the VM to see what's capacity?
Right, great question. So the gentleman asked, how often do we check with the VM to see what its capacity at? The metrics we actually pull every 5 minutes. And the 5 minutes, we pull them from the vCenter, but they are based on 15 20-second samples. Okay? So we're actually grabbing the metric every 20 seconds, and then we grab 15 of them, and then that's 5 minutes, right? And then we say, here you go, right, to vRops.
And I'd add, sorry. Hot mic. I'd add that the recommendation that is being calculated here is based off of a stress calculation that we're calculating every night and looking at the resource utilization and whether this thing is bumping and needing more resources or needing less resources. So in some cases, you'll see this recommendation will go up. We'll say you need more than you have now, or it might say, you have an opportunity to reclaim resources.
Perfect. So I can actually make this change now, but I'm not going to because I'm just going to make another one here. Yes, sir? So the gentleman's question is, he said that Chima said that it goes back and looks over time. And he said that Chima said that it goes back over time. And you can actually set it as much as you want, really. So what we do is we're capturing those information every 5 minutes based on those 20-second samples. We do the major analytic calculation on a nightly basis, right? But what we do is actually in the policy, there is a time range window. Now, we keep the data by default for 6 months. Okay? Data retention by default is 6 months. But the rolling window that we're looking at is, by default, a 30-day rolling window. Now, I've had customers, that's just a policy setting. You go in, it's set to 30, you change it to 60, you change it to 90, you change it to 15, whatever you want. So it's just a simple policy change that you can do to change the time range. Okay, the lady's question first, and then we'll come to you, sir.
When you get those recommendations, is it possible, if you don't have hot-head enabled, is it possible to schedule it so that after you have to reboot, can you schedule those tasks, or does it happen?
Roadmap.
Yes. So just so everybody else can hear, so the lady's question was, if it does need a reboot because it doesn't support hot add, can I schedule it? And the answer is no, you can't today. But as Chima said, it is a roadmap item. It's something that's really important for us, so we're working on it. If you do it now, you have to actually specify that allow the hot add, right? Which says also allow the power off. So did you see that? So if I click back here really quickly, you'll see there's two options here. So it's the state right now is powered on, power off allowed, right? If it's an OS that does not support hot add, I have to click that. And by the way, I can actually snapshot it before I actually make or invoke this change, right? So, but yes, the scheduler is very important. Eventually, we'll have it. Roadmap, as Chima said. All right, so let's go back home for a second. I want to actually show you another one, and we'll actually make a couple of changes just so you guys believe me that this stuff works, right? This is a live system, although it's pretty small. So, here again is the health. So remember, we have health and we have risk and we have efficiency. I really like the risk ones, and the reason why I like the risk ones is that's where vRealize is really giving you that proactive information, right? So if I go here, for example, add more memory to this virtual machine, add more CPU, right? Add more memory, add CPU. And then you have this action button right here, so I can actually immediately take the action without even having to go in and look at the alert. Now, what's nice about these alerts is that there's nothing actually broken on the VM. There's nothing that's not functioning. It's just that saying, over time, this guy's been using a lot of CPU and using a lot of memory, and based on that trend and the analytics, I am telling you, be proactive and fix this issue, right? So this is what these type of alerts are telling you, especially the ones that you see related to stress. So this gentleman first. So you can actually easily do that based on what Chima just said earlier, right? So we have the notion of first the role-based access controls, but also the custom groups. So the nice thing about this is you can basically go in and custom group anything in any way you want, and then you assign the rights to a role to that custom group, along with their own unique policy. So you can by modifying the dashboard. So one of the things that you get with vRealize operation.
Repeat the question.
Oh yes, I should repeat the question. Sorry, I try to do it, very just naturally, but sometimes I do forget. Forgive me. So the gentleman's question is, what was the question? About getting granular. Yeah.
But there's some things that you want to obscure that are sort of more, let's say, infrastructure-wise. So just expose them.
Yes.
Pertinent to them.
Yes. Excellent.
Get really crazy. Give them the ability to make those changes themselves.
Thank you very much. In my older age, I'm just losing my, short-term memory there. So the gentleman's question was, in a multi-tenant environment, right, can I actually have these views customized and tailored so that, they're not having to see anything that they don't need to or not relevant to them, and really kind of simplify the visuals for them, right? That's essentially what you're asking, right? And it's easy to do because we do have complete customization in vRealize operations, so you can go in and create like custom dashboards. I've actually worked with some large financial institutions, a few banks, and they've done some like amazing dashboards that they go in and customize and tailor and give to different business units and whatnot. So it's all possible in here. Okay? Yes, sir?
Just one last quick question on what we're seeing here. I see add. Do we ever see remove?
Great question. Can I get to that in a moment?
Okay.
Okay, so great question. Okay, you will see that, but I'll show you where you're going to see that. Okay, and okay, we're going to get to the capacity section next. Okay, so we'll cover that. So that's a great question the gentleman asks, and it's very important, right? Around capacity reclamation. Yes, sir. And then we'll go to the gentleman over there.
The decreased capacity was my original question, but now I was looking at the 15, 20-second samples, and you do that every 5 minutes.
Right.
15 times 20 equals 300.
Right. Right.
So that's telling me that you're monitoring constantly.
Right.
You select the samples every 20 seconds, and you take that and feed it through vCenter to vRealize.
So the gentleman's question is, you're constantly monitoring essentially based on that 15, 20-second samples, right? So the 15 times 20 is 300, and that's the 5 minutes essentially. And we are capturing that. And then what we do is we take those 15 samples, we actually average that sample and send it to vCenter. Okay? How does it differ from what you see in vCenter? Great question. You have to come to my capacity class tomorrow. Oh. Or Wednesday. Is it full, really? Oh. Okay. Okay, I actually cover that specifically in what you do in the policies, because you're absolutely right. There's like essentially very quickly, okay? How are we doing for time here? Oh boy. The Hisham tax kicks in. Very quickly, he's asking about how does this differ from vCenter. And the reality is, it depends on the capacity model that you and your organization choose to leverage in VROps, because we have different capacity models, right? We have a demand model, which means is you're looking specifically at what is the current demand, right? What is the demand for all the different metrics, CPU, memory, storage, I/O, network I/O, blah, 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 all the metrics, right? What's the current demand? But then we also have an allocation model, which says, hey, this is my 100% capacity right here, and you go in and you give a VM 4 CPUs and 16 gig of memory, but it's only using way less, right? So the capacity model for the allocation is based on that, what you've configured, right? Not what it's actually using. And then we have the one that actually is in unison with vSphere, which is the consumed model, right? So we can see, okay, you're using this much memory. Okay, yeah, I'm seeing that this is exactly the same in VROps, and it's exactly the same in vSphere, right? But there's a couple of important things you need to know about that, is just how we visualize those in the vSphere web client or the vSphere FAT client versus how we do it here. Because host and cluster, we show memory consumed in the vSphere client. On the VM, we show demand, right? Now, the nice thing, and this is what when I deal with customers, I try to understand what are they trying to do from a capacity perspective, and sizing, right sizing, capacity reclamation. Are they trying to, manage based on consumption, based on demand, based on allocation. You know, what is their tolerance for risk, etc. And then I determine which policy or which setting is best. But also, the nice thing is here, you can leverage any of these three in combination, right?
Keep it simple.
What's that?
Keep it simple.
So I got to keep it simple. All right. Okay. So please try to come to the capacity session if you're interested in a lot more detail around that stuff. I think it was that gentleman first, and then we'll come to you, okay? Right. Everything I'm showing you is in the standard vRealize operations license. So if you have vRealize operations standard, right, we have a standard advanced enterprise. You know, it's better if you buy it in the vRealize suite, but everything I'm showing you is in standard, including the dashboard.
You can't customize dashboards in standard. That's the one issue. But the dashboards are available. Correct.
Right. Okay. All right. We have to move along. You had a quick question, right? I promised you, so I'll come. All right.
Okay, so this is nice. We have VR. Well, what I would like to have, we have vCenter with our VM folder structure. So it'd be nice if we could get that information also.
Roadmap.
List of all these VMs.
Yes.
The ask was, so the gentleman has created a folder structure in vCenter, and he wants that imported into VROps, basically. We hear that. We also hear that customers want to be able to import their tags that they've created in vCenter and have that imported into VROps and create custom groups and objects in VROps that match. So we hear that, and that's on the roadmap.
You're hearing it from the product manager, folks, so there you go. Okay, thank you very much. So we're going to move ahead, and we'll try to capture some more questions just so we try to get through all of this stuff, right? So the other thing I just wanted to show here, for example, right, you know, SAP, I have an SAP server here. It's saying, you know what, add more memory to this. I can click on it. I can take the action right here. So you know what? It's recommending now roughly 2.5 gig. I'm just going to say, yeah, sure, power this thing off. That's fine. Go ahead, begin action. Same type of thing, right? So the scheduling, like we said, is coming, right? But I can actually make that change. It's all tracked. It's all audited. Let's do one more here really quickly. Let's do this guy. This one needs CPU. So I'll click on that. And this one has 2 CPUs and wants, you know, 3. Hey, let's go to 4. What the heck, right? Click on that. And I did that, and okay. Now, are you bored with having to click on these? Right? You're bored, right? I'm bored. All right? I just did 2. Okay, and so the reason why I just wanted to do like 2 or 3 of these is because I wanted to show you that once you start to get comfortable with these, because you've set up your environment, right, and you have all these essentially working exactly the way you want it, you don't have to come and do this. Now, all I have to do is go into the policy and say, you know what, VROps, you do this for me automatically, and it's still all going to be audited, right? So what I'm showing you here is actionable guided remediation through these alerting that we have in VROps. But again, you can choose to automate it, right? And that's what one thing that Chima mentioned earlier. Okay, so you can actually automate this, so you don't have to go in. But everything is there, everything's audited, you can report on it, everything is good. Okay. Now, one other thing I just want to show is vRealize operations is focused on metrics, performance metrics, CPU, memory, all those metrics I talked about. But remember, in any environment, there's a lot of information in logs, right? vSphere logs, OS logs, application logs, physical device logs, tons of logs. Well, you got to make sense of it. There's actually a wealth of information in there. So with our vRealize operations solution, we actually integrate with the vRealize Log Insight solution, which most of you own, right, for your vCenter environments. So now, one of the things I'm going to do, I'm just going to go back. Let's take a look at hosts, right? So I can see here, whoops. Let me refresh. Okay. I should have some in here. Where'd they go? Where'd they disappear on me? Okay, I must have canceled them already. So, let me walk you through this. I would have a notification alert here on a host. And so, for example, a host or a VM, right? And then what I would do essentially is I would say, you know what, I'm in here, I'm going to go to actions, and I need to go to an object first. So let me go to a specific host. Let's just select this guy, right? So I would go in here, go to the host object, and I see the alert, and that alert's actually come from Log Insight. Okay, so some of the alerts just canceled on me because if the issue gets addressed, the alerts disappear. 10 minutes and they disappear, okay, that are coming from Log Insight. So some of them disappeared on me, so that's all right. But we're going to simulate the situation. I have the alert, I'm in here, I come to the host, I troubleshoot the host, see what's going on from a structured data perspective and VROps, and now I want to go see the unstructured data, and then I'm going to go actions, and I'm going to say search for the logs in vRealize Log Insight. And it's going to take me over to Log Insight. And it is going to focus on that object. So it's going to filter on that object and basically pull up all the logs. Okay, now, very quickly, the alert that I had that canceled on me was about latency. Come on, I can't type. I should just use the... all right. So it was about latency deterioration. So basically I had some high latency in the environment was what the alert that I was simulating so I could show you. And then voila, now I can see that, look at this. I've been having some high latency in here. Oh, let's dig a little bit deeper. Now I can say, you know what? Okay, so I knew this was on a specific host, on that one that we were on. So let's take a look and see that host name. So I'm going to click Apply, selected host name, and then here's ESX01, right? And then you say, you know what? I want to see, because I came from that other host, well, is this happening on other hosts? I'm going to remove that actual host ID and then update. And now I can see, oh boy, I have a larger problem here. I have like a lot of latency going on all my hosts. You can see the different hosts, and I actually even have latency on a VM, right? Troubling for me, right? So I can dig down deep. Now, to Chima's point from earlier, KISS, right? Now you're thinking, okay, you're getting just too deep. The only reason why I wanted to show you this is for those of you who really love to dive and get into deep stuff, you can. But we at VMware have made this simple for you. So you're going to transition right here. You're going to go to the dashboards. We have everything related to you, or everything related to vSphere available to you here, right out of the box in the dashboards. And here you can see I have a SCSI latency error dashboard, and it just basically shows me that I have latency, and I can see everything right from here. Okay? So I didn't have to do any digging. Remember, we look at the logs, we capture the logs, we surface it, it's all right in front of you. Okay? And then also, if you're somebody that spends more of your time in the logs and the log analytics and you want to go the other way, you simply do the launch in context back into vRealize operations. One more thing I'm going to show you here, just for the sake of time. How are we doing for time, Chima? 12 minutes. Okay. We should be good. One thing I just wanted to show here is that we have this thing in vRealize Log Insight called the marketplace. So remember, the environment is not just about vSphere, right? The environment has different aspects. You got storage, you got networking gear, you got applications, you got all this stuff, right? So we're going to give you this. You see why it says unavailable? Because I'm on a pod and the internet access is turned off. Darn. Okay. Anyways, actually I did have it turned on, so I don't know what happened. The demo gods aren't happy today. The alert disappears. I can't get to the internet. Anyways, what you would see here is basically Cisco, NetApp, EMC, Brocade, Active Directory, Exchange, all the VMware products, you know, a whole bunch of other stuff, right? Apache, application, storage, networking devices, and you simply install them, and you say, send the logs over to vRealize operations, vRealize Log Insight, and now you have that. That is the point I just wanted to make around extensibility, and I'll make one more point around extensibility as I jump back to vRealize operations. So let's jump back to vRealize operations and talk about capacity. So if you are able to, please come to my session. Even if it's full, come on, try to stand by. So let's go in here. So remember, we were looking at this, and the production 1 cluster was quite heavily overutilized, right? We saw that already. So I actually just very quickly just searched for it. I went to the summary page of production 1. You can see that here. And so I can see it has some health issues, and there are some risk issues in here, but I want to really dig deep because I want to focus in on capacity. And so naturally, I'm just going to go to analysis here, and I can see that things have been jumping around, just like we saw earlier, right? We saw that jumping around for workload, and then I have a recent spike, right? You saw the spike, and it was consistent. Now, what do you see at the very end? A little dip. Why is that dip? Why? I made some adjustments. I did some workload balancing, right? I said go ahead and balance these two clusters. So it moved some VMs, and I have a little dip that came down now, right? So good. So I'm able to prove it, and you see in this visually here. That's that 30-day window that you saw also. You see it? Visually, I can see my rolling 30-day window, but we're still capturing all that data, right? And have all that analytics and the data in the product. Now, I see that here, and I can come in here and start to look at demand and consumed and all the stuff that I have configured in this environment, but I want to talk about capacity. So very quickly, for the sake of time, I'm going to jump into capacity. Now, I go to the capacity remaining on this cluster, and it's telling me right there that, you know what? It says, Hisham, you got some problems here. It says, I have some disk space problems, I got some memory problems, I got some CPU problems, so I got lots of problems. And so if I look down here, it's telling me I can't fit any more VMs. It's telling me I'm over by this many VMs. These boxes will tell you how many more VMs you could get in there. And by the way, you can create your own profiles, so you can actually see your profiles for VMs and what you can fit in here. But scrolling down, again, this is the type of stuff I'm going to go into detail on Wednesday, but I can see all this stuff, but 0, 0, 0. I'm out of capacity in this cluster, right? That's what this is telling me. Time remaining and stress are just giving me some of that same data in a slightly different way based on days, and then the stress is showing me how often this workload has been. But now, as a good infrastructure and operations administrator, I say, you know what? I want to start to address this now and start really getting ahead of this. So I'm going to go over here to projects, right? And this is where I can do capacity simulation. For those of you who are using VROps, who's doing some capacity simulation today? Excellent. So there are a few folks that are doing it. Good. Great job. So you can see here, I have this big red bar. Okay. So the left side all the way up to today is basically capacity shortfall in the past. I still have the capacity shortfall today, and that capacity shortfall is going for the distant future based on what I have, right? But I want to address this. So what I've done is I've created some projects down here, and there's one here called Provision New Hardware. Trust me on this. All this is saying add more hosts on this date, add more hosts on this date, and then add more hosts on this date. And so I'm just going to click plus on that or double click, and now what you're going to see is going to show the impact of me adding hosts on this date, and then on this date, then on that date. So you can see here on this specific date, about a week out from today, I'm actually adding some capacity. I'm adding some hosts. What happened to the red? It shrunk. Did the red disappear? No. What does that mean? Do I still have shortfall? Still have capacity shortfall? Yes. It means I haven't actually simulated adding enough capacity yet. But then I have this additional scenario in that project 1.2, 1.3, where I add more capacity. And now what happens? My blue line down here, which is my demand line, and my 100% up here, which would be my total capacity, I got a nice healthy gap, right? Which means if I actually do this and add this capacity, what's going to happen? I'm going to have enough capacity in this cluster moving forward. So as a good, again, administrator, now it's time for me to go and order capacity, right? One thing I would have done, obviously, before I go and order capacity is go to the reclaimable capacity section first. And that's where we're going to get to the gentleman's question here in just a minute. But I just want to show one more thing. I keep telling people, hey, the business never stops, right? You got other departments saying, hey, I want to add more SAP servers. So I have another project here that simulates adding more servers into your environment. So the first project I showed you was adding capacity. This one is adding demand. Not capacity. It's taking away some of that capacity. So when that shows up, you'll see here that on this date right here, I added these servers. What did I do right there? What happened right there? I made it worse. I made that red bigger. I actually added additional capacity shortfall. So it would make sense for me to talk to the SAP team and say, hey, I can get those hosts in on this specific date. Well, let's move this maybe a week out, or maybe let me see if I can get the hardware in a week earlier. And now I can go get the hardware, bring it in. I know I have enough capacity. Okay? Just because I told the other gentleman I'll get back to you on that, and I forgot when I was back in here in analysis, typically for I can't remember who asked the question about reclaimable capacity. Gentleman looking at his phone, reading his email and Twitter account. Googling, I like it. All right. So reclaimable capacity, this is where I would come first. Okay, so come in here, and this gives you, what is the capacity that I can reclaim within this cluster? Not a lot, but you can see there's a little bit. But where you want to go is this right here. Further analysis, virtual machine reclaimable capacity. For those of you who don't know this, especially if you're using VROps, this actually gives you a list of all the VMs on one page, okay, and it tells you exactly what you can take out for each of those VMs, and gives you an action button right next to it, so you can actually make those changes right there. Okay? So, check. Am I running out of capacity? What can I reclaim? A lot of capacity reclamation is political, in my opinion, as well, because I've dealt with a lot of big customers. But then, you go and then start to add capacity. All right? Good. So this was a little glimpse in how you can do capacity management and capacity modeling very easily. Okay, how many more minutes? 3, 4 more minutes, 5 minutes. All right. One other thing I just wanted to show here is, and I'm going to switch instances on you. So remember I talked about extensibility in vRealize Log Insight. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to show you the marketplace, but believe me on that. You can actually go to solutionexchange.vmware.com and see all those extensions if you choose to. But here I am in another instance of VROps. And you can see here, I just wanted to show you something, a dashboard list. So now you can see here, MPSD, vCloud Air, right? Let me show you this other instance here. So this is another instance, and what I have here is, let me just expand this. You can see Cisco Nexus, UCS, NetApp, Oracle, SAP, Zen Desktop. I don't know why I don't have EMC in this one, but we have EMC plugins. SAP, DB2, KVM. You see where we're going. So there are a ton of what we call management packs, which are simply extensions for vRealize operations. Now, for the gentleman in the back, yes, you do have to get into the advanced or enterprise to get some of these extensions. But if you really have a large heterogeneous environment and you want to be able to do that full SDDC management, right, you have the ability to do that. You're able to bring that information and leverage that agnostic vRealize operations engine that Chima talked about and do analytics even against that data. Okay? So I just wanted to show you these, and each one of these actually has a set of it comes with its own set of dashboards, right? So here I am, SAP dashboards, Oracle dashboards, right? So, Cisco dashboards. All these extensions come with their own set of dashboards, alerts, and reports, so you can get that additional visibility. So we only have a few minutes. So what I'd like to do, Chima and I, is maybe just open it up to questions. But one last thing I'll just show you here is the... Did I go back to the right instance? Any questions? Let's take some questions. Yes, sir.
The cluster DRS balancing, that assumes that all storage is visible across both clusters, correct?
That's correct. We're working on that.
Is there going to be bridge data storage?
So the question is, cross-cluster placement requires a shared data store. That is
hey guys,
true.
just before you leave, thank you very much. For those of you who are leaving, please take the survey for us. Thank you. But we'll keep answering questions. We still have some time. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, it requires a shared data store currently, and we're working to address that right now.
Yes, sir.
CPU ready? I didn't see that listed under any capacity or any of the alert help. Is that actually being reported on? Or
Yes, it is. We actually have that specific metric in there. And the nice thing also, if you want to create, we have some views that actually already have it, but if you have some specific use case where you want to see that specifically, like on clusters, hosts, VMs, you can actually go in and build your views and dashboards and get detailed visibility around that. One of the things I actually like to do around it too, by the way, is heat maps. But you can go in and say, you know, when my CPU ready hits, you know, 15%, I'm starting to get up there, right? So, yes, so you completely. Yes, sir.
For guest monitoring, have you made any enhancements or you plan on making an enhancement on how to deploy the agents?
So,
VMs at scale.
yeah, so the question is about monitoring endpoints. Beginning in VROps version 6.1, we introduced this endpoint operations agent. It's an extension to, or a follow-on to what we were doing before with Hyperic, if you're familiar with Hyperic. So we had Hyperic agents that went out on the endpoint and would collect application and OS information on the endpoint and send that to a Hyperic server. We had a Hyperic management pack for VROps that would make sense of that Hyperic information inside VROps. We took that external Hyperic server and embedded it within VROps as an endpoint server inside VROps. Now we've got endpoint agents out on the endpoint that send directly to your VROps instance, and so those OSs and applications and processes are now first-class objects within VROps for monitoring and doing dynamic thresholding and all the other analytics that we have, and also showing the tie from the process, OS, VM, host, network, storage, that full stack visibility within VROps as well.
Why it's difficult to install agent at scale.
Yeah. So installing agents at scale. Today, we have to depend on things like OpenStack and so forth, but we're working on the ability to do that from the server itself, like we do with Log Insight, for example. Yeah. Oh, the one last thing I wanted to say is that we're also working to forego having to install additional agents as well and just use something like VM tools to grab information.
Yes, sir.
What open source projects are you able to support? Kafka, Redis, these sort of things?
Good question.
What open source projects are we able to support? I'm not sure what you mean by that, but let's, from a monitoring. Yeah. So one way that you can grab information and make it visible within VROps is to utilize Log Insight. Log Insight can collect any unstructured data from anything, physical or virtual, open source or otherwise. You can feed that information into Log Insight, and then create a threshold or an alert based on that information, and then feed that information into VROps so that you have that visibility within VROps. There may also be a way, if you are familiar with creating a management pack, or if you're familiar with a management pack SDK, to create a management pack specific for that open source solution that you are interested in.
So you want to look at the API documentation because we do have an open API.
And the marketplace. It may already be in the marketplace.
Right.
Good point.
You gotta remember though, when you add stuff in,
Yeah, this gentleman's question.
planning integrating with SRM. I can simulate a data center failure, spare capacity, just body side in advance, not configuration.
So
Does the project plan incorporate SRM? Capacity planning incorporate SRM.
So I could literally say, this data center is dead, we have no spare capacity on the target based on the way this target is configured.
So I've actually run into some customers which, where as part of their vRealize operations implementation, we actually simulate, okay, if I took VMs from here and added them here, do I have enough capacity? And it's just simply another way of doing projects. So as long as that is part of your VROps implementation, you can actually simulate it. I don't know if you saw, but there was a third one there, which said move VM. And what I was trying to simulate in that one, if we had more time, was showing how you would say, okay, I've got VMs in one cluster. I want to see if these VMs in this cluster will in fact fit in this cluster.
So you could simulate that situation.
Right? So it's just a project that says grab the actual VM information from that cluster and simulate adding it here. Do I have enough capacity? So it is there today.
Kind of, but I have to manually create that aspect. You can't fetch the data straight from SRM.
Right.
That's true.
Right.
Roadmap. Well, now it is.
So we'll go with this gentleman and that gentleman. So. Yeah, so the one piece that I didn't show you is you actually go in and add the details. But you have multiple ways of doing it. You can go in and say, hey, this is host 1 in my environment.
With a particular profile.
And I can say, hey, use that guy's profile. Or you can go in and say, I'm adding this many CPUs. So it's completely customized.
Or you can say, I want to add this percentage increase as well.
And the gentleman over here?
So you can bring in other things with your management packs. Is there a way to export the metrics from VROPS out for the offline analysis?
Yeah, so you want to look at the same information that this gentleman needs to look at with the Suite API. So if you go in and look at the API documentation, you'll see some of the information, how to be able to capture some of that. Yeah, and there's also other ways through reports where you can actually export CSVs and stuff like that. So there are different ways where you can potentially pull some of that information out. All right, so wrap up. So he's been flagging us, so we're happy to take some questions outside for those of you who like. But guys, thank you very much. Please take the survey, and please try to come to some of our other sessions that we have listed up here. Thank you so much.